This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pal, Evan Grant, in a brand new era for the SportsDay Insider, once called Ballsy by a really clever guy who came up with that name. Wow, I love that name.
I know you love that name.
I did.
I don't think our overlords loved that name.
No, they didn't. And they didn't even love the fact that we spelled it with a Z. It was really hip. It was cutting edge, you know. It was
the Z is what made it, because it was BALLZY. And that's
ZY.
what really put us
Over
on
the
the
top.
edgy.
Oh, we were edgy. You know, it kind of
were
reminded
edgy.
me of when ESPN, something started on ESPN, and it was such a great thing there. And they all came on there wearing black leather jackets. And then one of the guys said, "Welcome to the end of our careers." I love that. That was the best opening ever for an adventure like that. We don't have that kind of thing going on. We're not wearing black leather jackets, but we will with David Moore moving on. Maybe not exactly retiring, but he's not working at the Dallas Morning News anymore. He's going to be doing other things.
The way you just said that makes it sound like he was fired. David is retiring from the Dallas Morning News.
Yeah, he's retiring from the morning news, but he's not retiring. He's going to do other stuff. He was wanting to do other things. You know, I think he wants to get into acting maybe a little bit, and that sort of thing. Regional theater, maybe do a little Shakespeare in the Park.
Oh, I thought he was going to do some tap dancing.
Tap dance. That's what it was. Tap dancer.
We will miss David, and this afternoon we will all gather to toast David on a great journey at the morning news. But SportsDay Insider soldiers on without him. We will be joined from here on out, right, by some special guests. We'll feature more SportsDay staffers, but most importantly, the most important thing is I get to talk more.
Yeah, like that wasn't happening anyway. We're going to be joined on this very first podcast of the new era. You know, and the podcast has been going on now for 10 years, I should point out, which is a milestone that we had not really previously discussed. But 10 years is a long time to be doing a podcast.
It is.
I think we did the very first podcast. I think we were the very first podcast in America, or North
go
America,
with that.
certainly.
Let's go with that.
Yeah. We were the very first one at the Dallas Morning News, maybe. Anyway,
yes,
maybe
we were.
Where were we?
We were and let me just say that we are the cockroach of Dallas Morning News podcasts. We arose.
How do you spell that cockroach? You said cockroach.
We came out of the primordial slime, and when everything is gone, Kevin and I will still be podcasting.
You know, that describes us too. Primordial slime. Maybe we should call the podcast that. Primordial slime. I like it.
Oh, that would be good.
It would be good. So on our very first podcast of this new era, our guest will be Tim Cowlishaw, longtime columnist at the Dallas Morning News. The only man, I believe, the only person at the Dallas Morning News who has more years of service to the Dallas Morning News than yours truly. Tim started at the Morning News, I think, in 82 or 83. I got here in 85. Yeah, he did leave to go to San Jose for a year and a half or so. I think, as he explained it to me, because he would know these kind of things, he has actually got 6 months longer service at the Morning News than I do.
Well, thank you for that stat update. And we're going to have Tim on to talk about the Stars and the Winnipeg Jets hockey series.
Yes,
we're going to talk some Rangers because there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to Kevin's most favorite element of the SportsDay Insider, some degree of potpourri today. I don't know how much po we've got to put into the potpourri today, but we'll have something.
Yeah, we'll have something. That was always David Moore's. If I get a little emotional, you know, when we get to the potpourri segment, because David always loved potpourri, and I might get a little emotional during that segment. So I just want to warn people about that ahead of time. I don't like it when I just bust out crying and people aren't prepared for it. It's unnerving to people when I do that. Sometimes I do that like in the grocery line. I'll just be standing there and just bust out crying, and it's just It's a little embarrassing. But
Kevin,
let's get
you
things
are
happening.
on one this morning. You were just rambling away.
I am rambling away. Well, we went to Florida over the weekend for a wedding. It was really nice. It was a person who works with the lovely wife, Debbie. And I had not been to Naples, Florida before. Have you been to Naples?
I've been to Naples.
It's nice.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice in the southwest corner of the state.
Yeah, it is.
It
is.
Did you have any
We
stone
enjoyed it.
crabs while you were there? You know that our friends at Trulux Fisheries or Trulux Stone Crab, they fish out of Naples.
Do they
Or
really?
they crab out of Naples, I should say.
Yeah. The amazing thing that you said that is that we were staying at this place called the Inn on Fifth, and behind it was Trulux.
Yeah.
And on your hotel key card, it says Trulux on the back of it. But we did not eat at Trulux. I could eat at Trulux anywhere. We ate at a couple of the local places there. One called the Captain and Crew. We loved that place. We ate there twice. Really good. I had stone crabs there. And another place called Sea Salt. I had the stone crabs there. Very good.
And I'm just going to say this before we get to Tim. Stone crabs, if I had one crustacean to eat for the rest of my life and you could supply me with fresh stone crabs, that would be it.
Really?
They are the bomb.
Yeah, they're good. And these were good. These were the jumbo ones,
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you would settle for just any mediums or anything.
Yeah, I don't know if the tariffs have already settled in or not on stone crabs. I don't know if we've got tariffs on those since they're being fished.
Well, if they're fished out of the Gulf of America, I don't think there's any tariffs.
I don't think there's, but man, they're not cheap. When we used to go to Miami on occasion and for different things and go to Joe's Stone Crab, right? But there you would not be getting the jumbo stone crab. You're just getting the regular.
Oh, you could get any size at Joe's.
But I have a hard time believing they were $30 a piece when I was getting them.
Oh, probably not at that point in time, but they are. But Joe's is no cheap dinner date.
No.
And you know the deal on stone crabs. You know how stone crabs are harvested, right?
Politely.
I've never told you this story.
No.
So the way stone crabs are harvested is they pull them out of the water. They get them in the traps. They pull them out of the water. They break off one claw. And they put them back in. So they are completely sustainable. They regrow, they regenerate that claw, and then they can be harvested again. So you are not killing the animal to get the meat.
Oh, and they don't mind that at all, the stone crabs. Oh, they're perfectly fine with you breaking off an arm and then letting them go back.
But they regrow it. They regrow it.
That's what the aliens will. That's what the aliens will say when they come for us, Evan. They'll say it's okay. They regrow them. No one minds. It's no big deal. And we'll be down here. They'll be shearing off our arms and legs. Oh my gosh.
We've got a partnership with the stone crabs.
Yeah.
All right, we need to get to Tim.
All right, coming into the stars segment of our podcast, we bring in our old pal, Tim Cowlishaw, who was just going to hang around to talk about the stars, but as it turns out, he can hang around for longer than that because he's so excited about the prospects of talking with me and Evan. So, Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Either that or he has nothing to do.
Absolutely nothing to do. Absolutely nothing to do. It's raining. What else is there to do? So, yeah.
Tim, so let's talk about the stars. And first of all, let's give your bona fides here. You once were kicked off the Cowboys beat.
Kicked off
the Cowboys beat. No, he gave up the Cowboys beat to cover the stars.
Yes.
Tell us, first of all, Tim, tell us why you did that.
It was the first of a series of midlife crises. I was 40 years old, and I had lunch with Dave at the Palm, and I said I want to do something different, either cover hockey or be the national college basketball writer if Tiger just wanted to do football, Tiger being Steve Richardson. And Tiger wanted to keep I didn't really pursue the basketball thing very long, but I do remember we brought that up. But I wanted to do something different, and there was no grand plan to become a columnist out of it, and I did it for 3 years, and the team went from invisible, missing the playoffs, nobody cared, to conference finals. Should have gone to the conference finals twice, but conference finals my last year. and then they signed Brett Hull. And so the year I became a columnist, they won the Stanley Cup. And so I covered all those games and covered all the games covered all those playoff games and all the playoff games the next year when they went to the Cup and lost to New Jersey. So that was sort of the foundation. Through the years, I haven't covered all the playoff games. There were times I didn't, but I've covered most of them in recent years, most of the home games and a little bit of the road. And so I've been around the Stars, Jim Lights and the people who've been there. I've been around some of them for 30 years now.
And you were a Dallas Blackhawks fan, were you not?
I was. Yes, that's a good point. High school, a lot of minor league hockey games at Fair Park, that great arena. You walk.
The
I think
Blue
there's
Modern,
some sort
I
of
believe it was
livestock
called.
show going on in there when you go to the State Fair. And I still go up there and I look up in the stands because I know a friend of mine had season tickets at center ice. So I know where we sat. And it's hard to believe that was a hockey rink. But I went to a lot of games. But, hockey disappeared really from the United States in the mid 70s into the 80s. It was not on ESPN, it was on Sports Channel. And you had to have some really obscure cable to even see Wayne Gretzky play in his prime, and I didn't have it. So it really wasn't until the mid '80s and ESPN started doing hockey that I think it started coming back around as a national sport.
Well, it's coming around here
Yes.
with the collapse of the Rangers and the Cowboys.
Sorry,
and
Evan.
Mavericks now. Boy, we're all Stars fans now. It's the number one sport in Dallas.
Well,
I may have some mixed feelings about this series myself.
The coming one? The coming
Yes.
one?
Yes.
You like the Jets. You like Winnipeg.
I'm a longtime Jets fan ever since they were the Thrashers.
You're an Atlanta Thrashers. I'm frustrated Atlanta Thrashers fan.
Actually,
Atlanta
I'm a
also had the
frustrated
Flames.
Atlanta Flames fan, but
You could be a Flames fan. You could be Calgary, or the only American city that loses teams to Canada twice. Whoa, we've got trouble. So Winnipeg, as far as the fans go, they do have a little bit of an area they can capitalize on. And if you think about it, when they won at the end of the 90s, that was the end of the Mavericks' horrendous decade, worst record in professional sports. The Rangers were pretty good, but the Cowboys were starting to die off. That was the end of Switzer and then the Campo years, or Gailey and Campo. So they had a little window to be the team to talk about in town. And they've got that for the next month. I mean, I think the Rangers, we can talk about them later and they'll come back. But yeah, with the Mavericks people are so mad at the Mavericks that they do have a little window here. And the way it matters how you play and how you win. And to win in 7 games and have excitement like that and have a new player just playing the best that anybody in a Stars uniform has ever played, Mikko Rantanen, for 3 nights, that rather than just winning 2-1 games and not being terribly entertaining, I think that matters a lot.
Now, Tim, you have twice now called on a particular player to be the champion of the Stars in a playoff series. You wrote the other day that Mikko Rantanen needed to come in big time, and of course, what does he do? He comes in as a hat trick in the third period of Game 7 to win that. You were a little more clever about it the last time you did that, though, when you called on a particular player and said that he was going to win it for the Stars. You want to tell us about that?
Kevin, I was a little more clever in 1999 when I was a young columnist trying different things. So my Game 7 advance column, the first time they played Colorado in the conference finals, and I spelled out Mike Keene's name with the first letter of each paragraph. Somehow I only had 9 paragraphs. I must have had longer paragraphs back then.
Yeah.
But Mike Keene obviously was not a goal scorer. I think he scored 6 or 7 goals that season. He was a checking forward, a third line guy, good player, had won a Stanley Cup or 2 in Montreal. But he comes out and scores 2 goals. And Gary Thorne mentions on ESPN my name in the column, and they said something about, we got to take Tim to the horse track with us. Yes, I did it the other day.
What led you to say Mike King was going to do that anyway?
Just, I wanted to go with somebody who's a good player who can make a difference, because like he played shorthanded situations. I thought he might get a shorthanded goal or do something. There was no great insight. There was no reason to think Mike Keane was going to be a scoring star, and he scored twice. So there are Stars fans I still hear from and run into 26 years later that talk about Mike Keane in that column.
And how you believed in Mike Keane, and you made Mike Keane a star, because
I did. He was
like,
nothing.
Tim Cowlishaw believed in me. I'm going to come through here.
Yes, he was nothing till I was around him. Although he had won the cup twice, now that I think about it, before he got to Dallas. Yeah. So I guess he was an okay player.
Pretty good.
And so last week I just said simply, it's Mikko's time. Mikko's got to win the game for him. Perfect way to introduce yourself to the fans. You just had a great game 5 against Colorado, and a big period, even though you didn't win in game 6. And lo and behold, he scores a hat trick in the last 13 minutes. So that was just, in its own way, maybe as improbable or more. I mean, because the Stars weren't even showing any signs they were going to score a goal. It was 2-0, and they might have had 10 shots in the first 2 periods, and none of them real scoring chances. And all of a sudden, Mikko Rantanen just goes berserk, and that's what I think fans can kind of capitalize on. There's a lot of interest now to see what he's going to do next.
Yeah, there's no question about that. So we don't know yet if Miro Heiskanen is going to be available, or Jason Robertson. Do you expect they'll be available for game 1?
I wouldn't expect Robertson to be. Now, this is all, because it's hockey, all guesswork. At the best, you can see him skate for a few minutes, but he had a knee injury in the final game of the year. Miro was recovering since January, so he's had almost 4 months since he got hurt against Vegas. And it seemed like Miro was close. It wouldn't surprise me if Miro played a game 1. Wouldn't surprise me if Robertson played by the time they get home for game 3. And those are 2 big. I mean, Miro's their 28 to 30 minutes defenseman. For them to have beaten Colorado without him is remarkable. Robertson's just a great scorer, and they have a few of those, but he's been their leading scorer over the last 3 years. So you throw him back in there, and they're just that much more dangerous up front.
Yeah. So let's just go right to it. And what do you think about this series? What are you saying? What's your prediction?
Have you done yours yet?
No, I've not done mine yet.
Okay, because I don't know if I want to tell you.
You think I've been copying off you all these years?
Maybe. I don't want to give it away if you haven't turned yours in. I went back and forth on this, and some of these things, like, we agonize way too much over these things. I said before it started, they're going to win the first round and lose to Winnipeg in the second round, and I stuck with that. Now, if you just watch the first round, Dallas certainly played better than Winnipeg did. Winnipeg beat St. Louis in 7 games, scored with less than 2 seconds to go to get game 7 into overtime. So they were as dead as you can be, and they rose up. But their best player, their goaltender, did not play well, and gave up 20-some goals and played poorly in all 3 road games. I don't think that necessarily means Connor Hellebuck, who's going to win the Vezina Trophy again, is going to play poorly the entire series against Dallas. He played great against Dallas this year. And I said Winnipeg in 7. If Robertson and Heiskanen come back and they play at their normal levels, I think Dallas would be very hard to beat. But I did say, and I wrote this in the column that I'm doing for tomorrow, that this is Dallas' toughest series left. If they win this, they could win the whole thing. They're going to play Edmonton or Vegas, one of the 2 teams that eliminated them the last 2 years. And then I think they can beat any team from the East, including Florida, the defending champs. But they got to get past Winnipeg. And I just think it's going to be another great series, a lot like the last one. But I did go ahead and I think it's bad luck to change, not luck, just something always goes wrong when you change picks. So I stayed with the Jets, but the way Dallas played, they have obviously a tremendous chance to win.
All right, Tim, you've got a better feel on hockey momentum and the emotions of Stanley Cup playoffs than either of us do for sure. And so the one question I had about this was, you just described both these teams winning in Game 7 and the fashion in which they did.
Yeah.
And those are big momentum boosts for teams.
Yeah.
Does either of these teams then come in with an edge over the other in terms of the momentum push?
Good question, Evan Grant. I don't think they do. And that's kind of why I felt okay sticking with Winnipeg. I think for them to win that last game, that was in its own way more shocking than what Rantanen did. They had to score two empty not empty net goals. They pulled their goalie. They took their goalie out 3-1. They got one goal with just under 2 minutes left, and then they went down to 1.6 seconds to tie it. Then they went deep into double overtime to score a goal. So for that third period and all those overtimes, obviously Hellebuck didn't give up any goals, and there were some great chances. So I think their goalie kind of got got back on the mark and got to where he needs to be. And I think Winnipeg feels just as good about winning that series as the Stars do. So I think momentum's hard in hockey anyway. I think you can play great in a series, and then it's a different matchup, and you don't look like the same team. And Winnipeg beat Dallas 3 out of 4 times and was very tough for Dallas this year. So I don't think Dallas gets the advantage fans would like him to get from other than tremendous confidence in Rantanen and the finish line, as we call it.
Well, let me ask you this.
Line.
Yeah,
Finish
let me
line.
ask you. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Two ends, one end. It works either way.
Yeah, exactly. So, how screwed up is the NHL and its playoff seedings when they're playing the two best teams they could play basically in the first 2 rounds?
Well, I mean, you're not going to avoid that unless you're just going to make it 1 through 16. Because this year, Winnipeg had the best record in the league. I think the Stars were third. I mean, with their collapse the last 7 games, maybe they fell to fourth, and Colorado was 5th or 6th. So it's just, I don't know that I like it, the NHL system with the divisions. You get some of the same matchups year after year. LA and Edmonton have played 4 years in a row. Edmonton has beaten LA to start the playoffs 4 straight times. That can't be too entertaining for LA fans. It's a little screwed up, but I don't think there's a good way to get around it unless you're going to scrap conferences completely, and I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, you could just reseed for the playoffs, though, right?
Well, they do. Well, that's what they used to do, as opposed to the NBA. It used to be you'd reseed after a round, and if a team upset somebody, they didn't get to just play. If they're the 2-7, they didn't just play the 3-6. They'd play the 1 seed or whatever. So I think the old format was better, but I don't know. All these teams, Vegas and Edmonton, the other 2 teams left in the West are the teams that beat the Stars the last 2 years. So there's 5 really good teams in the West, and we knew one of them would lose in the first round. That turned out to be Colorado, and now the four best teams are left. So I don't think there's a huge difference in who you're playing.
All right, that's good enough for me. That's some good stuff, Tim. Thank you for
thank you.
I have one other question on this series.
Evan on a car phone.
Tim, what do you? I mean, you mentioned if the Stars are at full strength, that's obviously a big difference. But as this series starts, and the way Oettinger has played in playoffs, is that the biggest edge the Stars have? I know you talked about Hellebuck and what he did during the regular season. What is the edge that the Stars could potentially deploy here?
The funny thing about that is, I think everybody would look at him and say, with Robertson coming back, their scoring depth. They got 3 scoring lines. But if you look at the regular season, Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado all scored 277 goals. So we have in our mind, Colorado's got McKinnon and McCarr. They're so flashy. And the Stars have all this depth. Winnipeg, they're pretty good. They mostly rely on their goalie. They all scored the same number of goals over the course of the year. So to say Dallas really has any kind of scoring edge, you're kind of going, well, it feels like they do. But Winnipeg scored as many goals in the first round as they did, and they scored as many goals in the regular season as they did. So I do still think I would say the veteran play of the Finns, Mikko Rantanen, Rupe Hintz, Michael Granlund, those guys have been around a while. Winnipeg's got some younger scorers. So I do think they have that. Ottinger's not for me, an advantage. Ottinger is hit or miss. Ottinger, I don't think of him the way I did 2 or 3 years ago. I think he's good. I don't think he's borderline great. I think he's good. And oddly enough, good would have been better than Connor Hellebuck in the first round. Now let's see which Connor Hellebuck they get in this round.
Yeah, I'm with you on Oettinger. That, to me, this is who he is. We keep waiting for him to be great in the playoffs, and he's just not.
He has great moments. He has great moments,
Yeah.
and he was really good when they were coming back and Rantanen scoring those goals. They had Colorado had some good scoring chances when they were trying to tie it up there before the empty net goal, and he made some good stops. But that's who he is. You're right.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for the Stars segment of our podcast.
Okay, there go the Stars.
There goes Stars. We're going to move over now and talk about the Rangers. Nothing going on there, so let's move right on into. No, just kidding.
We're changing on the fly here.
Okay, that's what we're doing. That's what Chris Young is doing.
Hockey. Bret Boone.
Jake Berger, you're out of here. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. A name pulled out of a hat here. Bret Boone is now the hit. First of all, what is his title, Evan? Is he the hitting coach? Is he the offensive coordinator? Is he the defensive coordinator? Is he the special teams coach? What is?
Look, I mean, I don't think people should get too caught up in titles here because he's going to have the same title as Justin Vealey. They're both going to be hitting coach. Seth Connor is going to be the assistant hitting coach. I think the main goal here, and look, anytime you make a coaching change in season, and I really don't think it matters what sport, you're not looking at changing techniques or schemes or whatever you're trying to do. You're trying to get somebody who can get a message across a little bit more clearly. And that obviously is what the Rangers are doing here. And so I don't know that that the lack of coaching experience that Bret Boone has is necessarily a hindrance if he can get the message across a little bit more effectively to this club about the idea of not just getting your individual swing off as much as possible, but getting team at bats off and winning the situation. I think that is what the Rangers are trying to accomplish with this move. And I think also, one thing that Chris Young said yesterday was he made the parallel to Mike Maddox and what Mike Maddox does. And Mike is definitely not a new school pitching coach. I don't think he resists any of that, but he's a guy who works on conviction and confidence and tries not to bog his guys down with a whole lot of thoughts. And I think that's what they would like to do. And we know who Bret Boone is. He's a cocky little guy. He is a confident guy. He's got an edge to him. And I think it's something that this team lacks. And if they can't, I'll give you an example from Bruce Bochy's past. He hired a pitching coach one year, basically because he didn't think he had an ace on his staff with the right attitude. And so he brought in Dave Stewart as his pitching coach, who didn't have any coaching experience at that point in time. And the Padres went to the World Series. I don't know if this is the same situation here, but I think that there are some parallels.
Yeah, my problem with this move, and I know that fans were clamoring for this all along. They always want to fire the coaches in any sport.
I don't ever get that. That's a podcast for another day. Fans just automatically wanting to fire everybody.
But the thing that's different now, it's different from a Dave Stewart move or any other kind of move you make during a regular season, is that because of analytics and what they have grown to become to mean in the sport of baseball, you're not just removing one person. It's like you're taking out the entire unit. It's like you've unplugged your data system here, and now we're going to come in with a different approach. And you're calling in a guy who didn't install this system, And now he's supposed to understand it on the fly and also help these guys understand it. And I just have the hardest time, thinking that this is going to work.
Listen, let me say this. I'm not a big fan of in-season coaching changes in general, and I don't think that Donnie Ecker's system in any way was bad. Uh, I know he worked exceptionally hard, and I know that he tried to get the players to train really hard so that the game would be easier for them. I think that was, if you tried to boil his philosophy down to a sentence, I think that was it. But in Justin Veely, they have a guy that is in lockstep with Donnie in terms of approach, philosophy, emphasis on biomechanics. I think that we've seen coaching staffs grow, and we now have a 3-man hitting staff. We have 3-man pitching coaching staffs. And I think that everybody has to fill an element. And I think if there was one place where the Rangers hitting coaches came up a little bit short, it was on that real-time experience. I think major league experience was important to Chris Young. And I think there was the idea of conviction, go to the plate with confidence and with a little bit fewer thought. I think if you boiled the Rangers problem down this season to this, it's that this team spent a lot of time worrying about what other pitchers do really well instead of focusing on what they need to do in that particular at bat and what they do really well.
Let me ask a couple of things if I can
Sure.
jump in here,
Please.
as your stars guest. One, I think the move can work because Corey Seager's back and he'll hit, and Marcus Semien has had terrible first 2 months before, and he'll probably hit better now. He's getting older, but I can think guys can just hit because they'll hit. But doesn't it? The more you're around it, Evan, doesn't it strike you that Chris Young and Bruce Bochy are a bit of an odd mix? And it worked for a World Series, and odd mixes can work. But Chris Young wants to fix everything today, and Bruce, what he's good at is understanding it's 162 games, and I've got good players here, and I can't just put lineup names in a hat and start changing everything because we're on a bad losing streak.
I think that, having guys who bring different strong suits is a great asset until it's not a great asset. I do think Boch and CY work really well together. And I think that the one countermeasure here is if you had a less secure manager, I think it would become more of an issue. But I think Bochy's in a very secure spot. And if he just wants to walk away, if this situation becomes too tense, he'll just walk away. He doesn't have anything to prove. So I think that, there's an element that Chris's position of I'm not going to wait around as long as I did last year. There's an element of urgency that he brings to the situation. And I think there is an element of I need to present an even keel, confidence, face forward approach publicly that Bochy brings. And I do think it works. I think the biggest concern here that guys is you can send Jake Berger down, and he didn't have a great first 6 weeks. And I think the Rangers want to get that right. Evan Carter wasn't up here, and he was part of the intended mix. They've had a number of injuries. All of that's true. I think that the things that are most concerning here are, you look at Adolis Garcia's numbers and how his swing percentage has gone up and up and up. I think it's 57% at this point in time, 10% over where it was 2 years ago. And you look at Marcus Semien, who has had slow starts in the past, but the numbers are off since the start of last year. And there's a real possibility that these guys are just in decline. That's an absolute possibility, and that's not fixable. That would be the thing. You can change messaging, you can do all this other stuff, but if those guys aren't fixable, then you've got a sunken ship.
And overall, wouldn't you rather be, though, after 30 whatever games, a team that's just horrible to watch and is not hitting, but has 4 or 5 starting pitchers pitching lights out and near the top of the league in ERA, or a team that gets you 6 runs a night, but your starting pitching is a disaster.
Well,
You'd
we've
rather
seen
be what
50
they
of the
are.
we've seen 50 seasons of the latter. Maybe this fresh approach is great.
This is the new approach. Pitching.
I would say this. I agree with Tim when he said it is a real mix of approaches between a real dichotomy there between Chris Young and Bruce Bochy. I do believe that this is Bruce's last season as a manager, win or lose. Whatever they do, I think he's done. Actually, and it's not because he has a problem with Chris. It's just because I think he's ready to go, and we'll see how that happens. But I do think also we don't really talk about this a lot, but you have mentioned it, Evan. But it's not just a bad start. This is a carryover from last year, and it looks more as time goes by. It looks more and more like, and I hate to say this, but that 23 was a fluke. That they just hit really well that year. Everything came together, and everybody. And there were several guys who had career years. Although Jonah Heim has come back with a nice start to this season, you could, and certainly Adolis, that was a career year for him. That several people, everything just comes together, and that's what happens in championship seasons, right?
And
you think going 11-0 on the road was a fluke in the playoffs?
Maybe so.
And look, Bochy always talks about, if there's a formula to winning a World Series, it's that you've got to have a couple of guys overperform their career lines. And it certainly appears that Leody Taveras and Adolis Garcia both were those guys in 23. And maybe that was a career year for Jonah Heim as well. But I don't think that last year was an indicator that the guy's skills were declining. I think last year was a bad year for Heim. I think he's a better offensive player than he showed last year. But you have to consider the possibility that it was a career year for Leody Taveras. And I think the Rangers' moves to put him on waivers and potentially take him off the 40-man roster are consistent with that thinking. And I think that Adolis is a real concern. I think, Kevin, you and I talked about this yesterday offline. We talked a little bit about what's the next step. And I think the next step is very possibly that if things don't change here in the next 10 days or 2 weeks, you could see Adolis Garcia lose significant playing time, especially if Carter comes up and is playing well. And Alejandro Osuna continues to play well in the minor leagues. I think that's a real possibility.
Yeah, I think it's more than a possibility. I think it's a probability at this point. Just because of what Tim said. I don't know if we've indicated that enough in our copy, but Chris is extremely impatient.
No, I think you've indicated that plenty.
Well, I don't know that I've ever been around a general manager who's as quick on the button as he is. That's what fans like for certain, is to see a guy who's going to react to things. And I think for the most part, obviously the moves he's made have been good ones. They led him to a World Series, and so I do think that has worked out well. I'm interested to see though what they will do here if these internal moves don't do anything. What they could do externally as far as making a trade and adding a player to the lineup. Do you think that's a possibility at some point, Evan?
Well, let me say this, that the, on that front, if Taveras is claimed off waivers, the Rangers are going to save $3.25 million, which will get them back below the salary cap threshold. And it does give them some ability to potentially add. But other than that, if things don't work and this team continues to sink, I don't see Ray Davis saying, yeah, go ahead and add somebody and push my payroll over $241 million. I think at that point in time, you're looking at a team that will be sunk pretty quickly. I do think that the next step, is Adolis Garcia loses playing time. I just think that's the logical next step. And at some point, maybe you start to take playing time away from Marcus Semien too, if you don't see improvement.
And at some point, you take innings away from Tyler Mahle. If the team is
actually, I think at some point in time you start to talk about, can we trade Tyler Mahle? But let me say this about Mahle. Malle's got $5 million in incentive bonuses that start at 100 innings, and that is a real concern because that's a real wild card issue. If the Rangers are going well, sure, they'll pay that money, but if they're not, they're going to look to move that as fast as they can.
the worst part about all this is that the West is so winnable this year.
Yes, it is.
And even the American League. It'd be one thing if the Astros were off to a great start, or the Mariners were too, and it looks sustainable on their parts about how they were playing. But the Astros are struggling. Their hitting is struggling almost as much as the Rangers are.
And
only one of us saw that in the spring and picked the Athletics to win the division. Just keep that in mind. Laugh all you want.
Yeah, I'm going to keep laughing at that.
But Wilson winning the batting title.
The one thing that I do think is not sustainable is I just don't see Seattle continuing to slug the way they have. Now, they had a great series against the Rangers, but I don't see them continuing to slug the way they have. And so I think they're going to come back to the pack a little bit. It is a very winnable division.
Isn't it funny? And I was only there for 5 or 6 days. How much the word slug was used by Bochy and everybody in spring training. This is a team that's all about the slug.
It's about the slug.
Like 8 games without a homer or whatever it was.
And let me tell you, they have been about the slug, like the animal, the slug.
That's all I was going to say. It was slugs, is what you heard.
They got it confused.
Yeah.
Hey, Kevin, there is one thing I want to say. And look, I mean, I know Chris Young has talked to you and has told you about not being as slow to the trigger as he was last year. And there is some element that if you take this season in a vacuum, these have been impatient, impulsive moves. But I think, to your point, into the columns you've written earlier, I think this is, just like Tim said, this is more in Chris's mind. This is a year plus now that that he's basing these things on. It's not in his mind impatience. It's, I've given this more than a year, and we need to make some changes.
Yeah, no question about that. All right, that's going to do it for the Rangers segment of our podcast. We're going to move over now and talk a little bit about everything. And one of our favorite segments, the potpourri segment, Tim, is what we call it. We have a little bit of everything in this. We could move from one to the next.
Get some out of the bathroom.
Yeah, it's a fragrance. I love the fact you've got potpourri on hand. It's good. David always loved it. So
we're still trying to nail down that potpourri sponsorship.
Okay.
I haven't got one yet. Let's start with, because Tim hasn't been with us, and we've just beaten this horse to death about the Mavericks. Of course, I can remember when the trade was made. I was already in bed. My phone's going off. I go over to the phone. I'm reading this thing on
I remember exactly what you said. Why don't you let Tim have the first run at it?
That's right. That's exactly what I said. All right, so let me go back to bed and let Tim write this one, the first one. I came in after that. So obviously it's been quite a mess. Now that the Lakers are out of the playoffs, which is the greatest gift possible to Nico Harrison, that the Lakers are out of the playoffs. I don't think it's that big a surprise, because really, once you get past Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves, that's not a very good team. Luka left a better team than the one he joined. So let me ask you this, Tim. We've complained ad nauseum about all that, but should Mavericks fans be just as angry to watch Jalen Brunson steal a first game in Boston in the second round series?
I remember going back to that Utah series, which was the year they played Golden State in the conference finals. So 2022, not that long ago, 3 years ago. And Luka didn't play the first 3 games, and Dallas got up 2-1. And in the home game, I'm trying to remember if Brunson had 35 or whatever he did, but he clearly outplayed Donovan Mitchell. And then they went ahead and won in 6, but they didn't really play better after Luka came back. They just played different. Now, Luka was great against Phoenix in the next round, but I remember thinking in that series, like, if you have a guy that's good and you give him the ball all the time, there's a lot of guys that can pile up big numbers. Not saying Luka numbers, but if Jalen Brunson, if somebody committed to this guy, if they didn't have Luka, this guy would have really good numbers. And it seemed crazy at the end of that year. They didn't realize all their little trickery with his contract that they'd pulled from the time they drafted him, really, then didn't offer him what they could have to try to keep him, that they didn't realize this guy's going to want to go show what he can do. And his dad is now coaching for the Knicks. And there's all these things lined up But yeah, I mean, availability being part of it. We'll see over the next 5 or 6 years how many games Jalen Brunson plays compared to Luka. We'll see what the Knicks do compared to the Lakers. It's a fun thing for Mavericks fans to watch. Watch two of the signature franchises in the league play with their former point guards while they're trying to figure out what's going on here. I wouldn't expect Jalen to have Luka's career, but I certainly wouldn't rule that out, given the way he's playing right now and given the way he's played in New York. I think it's much closer than the Mavericks ever would have dreamed of, even when they lost Brunson.
Has there ever been a franchise that screwed up with more point guards than the Mavericks?
Strictly point guards.
Traded Jason Kidd, a Hall of Famer, before his career really even taken off. Let Steve Nash walk.
Yeah.
Became a 2-time MVP. Let Jalen Brunson walk. And now he's gone on and become an MVP candidate in himself. And then, of course, traded Luka Doncic.
That's 3 Hall of Famers and Brunson. So there's a chance that's 4 Hall of Famers that they've allowed to go or traded. You know, the Luka one is still, I guess you could look at the Jason Kidd trade, but if you look back at that, he had made, I think, 1 All-Star team when they traded him. Everybody knew he was really good and he was young. And a lot of people thought at the time, this is a bad idea to trade a good point guard this young, but that's different from 5 first-team All-NBA in a row and the things getting to the finals. Jason Kidd certainly hadn't taken the Mavericks to the finals like Luka did. So Luka would still be number 1, but those are 4 pretty preposterous moves for 3 different administrations to make.
No, let's just blame them all on Nico. Let's just
put them all on Nico. No Kidd, no Zaccanelli, no Cuban.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I can remember before Mark Cuban told me the last time I communicated with him that one of the great parts about not being calling the shots anymore is that he didn't have to deal with me anymore. Was that his explanation for the whole Jalen Brunson thing? Well, listen, that was all. I guess the question is, do we think it was inevitable that his dad was going to steer this thing so he could become, a point guard in New York and he would get a job on the coaching staff, but also so Jalen could be a great player? My personal impression of Jalen was that he was the perfect guard to play next to Luka because of the lack of ego and because of the lack that he could adjust his game. He could play second fiddle to Luka when Luka was on the floor. Then he could take things over when he wasn't. But at some point, you have to wonder: would a guy say, "I want to run my own shop here. I don't want to have to play second fiddle to this guy"?
That's a good question. I think they could have done different things with him contractually that would have had him bound to be here at least a couple more years. But I think those games in the playoffs against Utah opened his eyes. And even if he had some uncertainty, everybody believes in themselves, but you're not sure. And then all of a sudden he's scoring 30 a night against the Utah Jazz and they're winning without Luka. Then he's got to be realizing, look, I can play for different teams and have the ball in my hands and I can do this. So I would say that's probably the least of the 4 I would get on him the least for losing him, because I think it was probably inevitable, but it didn't have to be right away. And they could have had another year or 2 to try to win that thing with Luka and Jalen. And that might have been a difference.
Of course, the thing always too is that if you had signed him to an extension and you knew you were going to lose him eventually, then you could trade him, right?
Yeah, right.
At least you get something for him. As it is, as we're talking about those guys, I can remember going back to the Jason Kidd thing and going in and doing a story on the Mavericks after that and talking to Butch Beard and one of the assistants, and I basically asked him, "Why did y'all trade Jason Kidd?" And he practically came out of his shoes. He said, "You can't shoot." And it's like, he's pretty good. I even without shooting, he's pretty good. I don't know what to tell you.
Was he 3rd all time in 3-pointers or whatever?
He became a better 3-point shooter after that. He certainly made
himself a shooter.
He made himself a shooter. Yeah, he was pretty good. They didn't understand that kind of thing back then. All right, Tim, I don't know. Did you get to go out to the Nelson any last week?
I did not. I was doing star stuff. I thought about it on Sunday, but Scotty had a 14-shot lead, I think, so I just decided not to to go see the drama of that. But I did watch some of it, and you know, I don't love that course. We'll see what they do after they change it some. You know, second place was what, 23, 24 under par.
Yeah.
It's a bit.
Is it not a joke? I mean, that was my one question on this. Is it a joke, or is that is that
the
home
2 years
course advantage for
Lee won
Scheffler?
it, and he was 24 and 25 under, I believe, the years he won it. So it's you know, even if Las Colinas wasn't the toughest course in the world, a lot of times the winner comes in at, I don't know, 14 under par or something like that. They didn't just tear it up like they do this place. Jordan shoots a 62 on Sunday, just kind of pulls that out of nowhere. So there's too many low numbers out there. I don't find that particularly enjoyable. I think it helps him to, obviously, Scotty Scheffler, the best player in the world, won, so that caused a few people to tune in.
Well, it was 2 years ago. It was the second easiest par 71 on the tour. Last year, it was the easiest par 71 on the tour.
Yeah, well, it's going to be the easiest again.
Well, now Lanny Watkins says that he's going, to make it tougher.
Well, you love Lanny Watkins.
I do, Lanny. Well, he reads the paper, he reads us, he knows who we are. Anybody, listen, that's what I want to say to anybody.
Because he's 80 years old or whatever.
When someone says that they I love your stuff, well, you are my new favorite golfer, Lanny Watkins. Let me just say that. But
picking him in your Masters pool next year?
You're easily purchased.
Gosh, are you kidding? Absolutely. I just like the fact that I was even be in the market for somebody to purchase me.
So Lanny Watkins knows who you are, Kevin?
Well, yeah,
everybody knows Kevin.
Yeah.
Did I speaking of that, did I tell you, you guys will both appreciate this. Last week when Rangers were in San Francisco, I'm on the field on Friday afternoon. I'm trying to talk to some people, and all of a sudden comes running across the field. I see you. I see you there.
I knew it was going to be him.
By God, it was Will Clark. He was so happy to see. It was the happiest he's ever been to see me.
What would Will Clark say about a team with 3 hitting coaches?
Well, we might have had a conversation in which we talked about how nobody can hit a fastball these days, and Will might have directed me to some of his Twitter videos.
You watch my videos and then you go, see ball, hit ball.
Yeah, that was back in the good old days when the clubhouse, the guys are sitting around in the clubhouse afterwards, drinking beer and talking baseball. They don't do
it's a different atmosphere now. I'm not going to sit here and ruminate on that, but it is a different atmosphere.
Yeah, there's no question about that. So Tim doesn't think that Lanny can save the Nelson.
I don't think he can. I'm gonna go the other way from Kevin.
Okay, all right. But there's no place else for him to go. They're going to sign this deal, and it's going to be at Craig Ranch now for a long time.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
So we'll see.
They're going
as long as the local guys can win is enough, though, right? I mean, if Scotty's in the running, if Jordan Spieth's in the running, if Will Zalatoris is in the running, that's enough, isn't it, for this tournament? I mean, for what it's going to be, it's never going to go back to what it was in the late 90s.
Okay, so let me ask you this: can they do? And I know when I first got here, right, with all those tents at Las Colinas and everything, that the Nelson had, I don't want to say a party atmosphere, but it was a very social atmosphere.
Yeah, there might have been a party atmosphere at the Nelson.
Yeah, it was a party atmosphere.
But I mean, now the Waste Management Open has
hammered out there.
Yeah, right.
Waste Management has that reputation now.
Waste Management has taken that over.
Yeah,
which is it's a good sponsor for that tournament. But could they do with the Nelson what they've done with the Waste Management Open and recreate that kind of party atmosphere to at least make that exciting? Because I don't think that throwing ridiculously low scores up on the board by everybody is very exciting. It's like watching a putt-putt tournament.
Tim?
Oh, I thought that was directed at Kevin. I don't know. He's the Lanny rebuild. I don't know what Lanny's designed. Kevin's been over in Lanny's garage looking at some of the holes.
Lanny, I love all this. This is really nice. This is going to be great.
See, we read it. At least we read it.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know that anybody's going to go quite as far. They get massive crowds in Scottsdale. You wouldn't believe. I was out there one time, just in that area when they were doing it. I don't think you're ever going to get that in Frisco, but you could create a couple holes like that. I think other people have tried that. The whatever that hole is on Colonial, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 is sort of like that at Colonial, where they get a little party atmosphere up in the par 3 stands there. I just don't know if that's gonna be enough. You're right about Scotty. They're very fortunate. The best player in the world lives here. One of the 3 most popular players in the world lives here, and is well, he's had an AT&T sponsor. I guess that's not the sponsor now, but they're probably always going to play it. But there may come a point they got to play. I guess Scotty is skipping this week, but most guys play this week, and then the PGA is the next week. So both the Nelson and Colonial are stuck in a bad place in the schedule. They're only going to be mid-level tournaments, and that's okay. I think the Nelson survives because of the 2 great golfers from Dallas. I'm not going to put Zalatoris in there yet. He's really good. He needs to get a little more going to be healthy to be in that mix.
The guy's hurt, man. Give him a break.
He is hurt. Okay? He's hurt a lot. He's got a bad back.
This is what happens when you're built like a hockey stick.
Well, anybody who has that tortured a putting stroke when you're 25 years old and you're doing all this stuff, and you got your hands and like, okay, if you have no natural putting talent at all, this is going to be a lot of work for you.
Yeah, it's a little work. Yeah, no question about that. Well, I do think that the best they can hope for is it's just a nice stop on the tour,
Yeah.
And if that's all it's going to be, then that's probably enough at this point. But it is, the schedule is the biggest problem with everything. That and the fact that it's always raining here. When they come. So
I got to say, this potpourri is off to a very slow start.
We have a one-note potpourri.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of different notes in there. Can we move on to the Kentucky Derby?
Okay, Kentucky Derby. Journalism didn't win.
Too sad. Journalism is dead.
Yeah,
journalism finished in the money, for crying out loud.
That would have been poetic if something had happened to the horse and they had to shoot it afterwards. And then we could have written that headline.
Everybody went with that headline. Yeah. Journalism is dead.
Yeah.
We could have edited it down. Journalism : dead.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's like
I've never been so invested in a Kentucky Derby since Secretariat.
Wow, look at you! I didn't even watch the Kentucky Derby. As I was telling Evan earlier, Tim, Debbie and I were in Naples, Florida, for a wedding. You ever been to Naples,
nice.
Tim? You ever been to Naples?
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah,
isn't that by Marco Island and all that?
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, certainly
Marco Island Marriott. I've been there.
There you go. All the Marriott.
Many years ago, it was coming on in the press box, but I was going downstairs to talk to Emily Kaplan, so I didn't watch the race either. I didn't see it.
Yeah,
I didn't feel good about journalism.
I did watch the race, and just as Sovereignty was crossing the finish line, the Rangers game started, and the first pitch was hit out for a home run.
Journalism is dead, and so are the Rangers.
Off we go.
Oh man. Wow.
That would have been a great play on the front page. Journalism dead, so are the Rangers.
Oh man.
And that game was 1-0 for about 5 innings too. That was the only
Did you guys get the did you see the note though that every one of the horses in the Derby was a descendant of Secretariat?
I think
saw that. I
every
thought that
horse
was
in
either
America
a joke or something.
I think. No, I think
how can that be possible?
I mean, it's just
that's quite a tree.
It is, but you get into really those mares.
That's better than Jimmy's coaching tree.
That's a horse that could have gone places at the old, Iron Nelson at the pavilion.
Secretary would have cleaned up.
that would bring the crowds out if Secretariat played in the Nelson.
Yeah.
Kind of like the horse in the Munsters, or when Mr. Ed could hit the baseball.
With Don Drysdale. With the Dodgers.
Yeah, why was it always Don Drysdale in those shows?
Because he had the good-looking hair. He was on the Beverly Hillbillies.
Because Koufax was only in it for the dramatic roles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don Drysdale.
All right, I feel better now. We potpourried out another element. We can wrap up with one of your signature outros, Kevin.
Do I have a signature outro?
Hold on. Keep talking.
Didn't you bring up something before the podcast started? Oh, Brett Yormark has just gotten a 3-year deal extension from the Big 12. So that is big news. Tim is showing us a baseball card. Is that what you're showing
Don
us?
Drysdale 1960 All-Star card.
You just happen to have your baseball card sitting there next to you?
I've got a 59 card somewhere. I've got a lot of cards here. I got a lot of things going here, Kevin.
My gosh, my baseball cards are like in the attic. I think I couldn't find them if I had.
I have mine watching me every day when I write. Here they are.
Wow.
There they are.
Oh my gosh. That is a sickness right there. Yeah. I thought that Dan Galvis was bad.
Look at Newt Rockney in the back there.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if we've reminded Tim. This is not a video cast.
I know, for us it is.
Oh well.
Yeah. Well, that was scary.
I'm going to put that to the readers.
I'm going to put that in your obit, Tim.
Yeah.
That was something with all of Tim's baseball cards sitting there on his counter.
This is all my retirement, basically.
Oh my God. That's a little scary. Well, we were mentioning Brett Yormark, whose claim to fame basically was that he stepped in after Bob Bowlesby and got a big contract with Fox and ESPN that Bob couldn't get at the time. And so he's a little different. There's no question about that. He did kind of more or less that led to the demise of the Pac-12. And then Brett finished it off by pirating a few schools from that league. So I guess this is a good move for the Big 12. Now this is all they can kind of hope for, is that Brett can come up with ways to make them more money, because there is no way to improve the league from a standpoint of adding to it or adding more brand names to the mix. That's not going to happen. That ship has already sailed. So I guess that if I'm one of the presidents in the Big 12, I'm okay with them extending Brett. I am a little surprised that he hasn't moved on by now. He's had quite a diverse portfolio over his career.
So. Well, I don't know if any of the conferences above him. I mean, he's not going to go to the SEC. He's not going to get the SEC job or the Big Ten. The ACC is kind of the same level job.
I think he would just get out of college football.
Just go on to do something else.
Yeah, just do on something else. I mean,
move on to his next deal. There's a lot of little things that are a shame about the Big 12. Would you rather have SMU or Central Florida right now? Which one would you feel better about in a world where you're paying football players? I'd rather have SMU.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's tough, and I have a tough time thinking about whether to write about the Big 12, because I mean, what do people care around here? They care about Texas, they care about Oklahoma, they care about the Aggies. There's even some that care about SMU. None of those teams play in the Big 12. So, Arizona State, Iowa State is your championship game, and that's who you are.
It is who you are, and Brett's trying to sell it as a basketball league. That's why he went after UConn. He was going after Gonzaga. And the other presidents were like, "What are you talking about, man? We like being good at basketball, but we still consider ourselves a football
league." You can't do that. I mean, and oddly enough, they weren't that good at basketball. That Kansas and Baylor and some of the usual teams weren't that good. They should be the best basketball league with the teams they have. But I
think a Big 12 team went to the finals.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
Tim doesn't count Houston. He's got a big problem with the Cougs.
That's hard for Kevin to talk about or think about, so I wasn't going to bring that up.
He still owes me lunch on that.
We did, yeah, I do owe you lunch over that. That was a worse finish than '83. Let me say that. And I was there in '83. That was a bad finish, but it was the other team.
'83 is just one thing. This was possession after possession. Let's not get a shot off.
That was awful. 19 seconds and you can't get a shot off. That might have been the worst moment in the history.
I don't blame the last play on Sharp. I blame that on LJ Cryer dribbling over to the side, getting trapped, and just say, "Here, you take the ball. You do something with it." LJ Cryer needed to create a shot on that last possession.
Well, they're best, and he's by far their best offensive player, and that is the one problem of asking so much of a team defensively, is that what are they going to give you offensively? Yeah. But if you're going to do that, then run some set plays. I mean, there was no such thing with them as a pick and roll. Somebody would set a pick, but they wouldn't. He's not rolling to the basket after that. It's like, Can we do something? Can you set up a play here?
They don't work on that end.
No, they don't. They don't work. They're doing a lot of diving. They're doing a lot of playing defense, but they're not spending much time shooting or running plays.
I'd like to say that 5 minutes ago, Christian, our producer, told us to wrap it up, and you're still rambling
I didn't see that.
I think Christian left.
I'm gonna have to get on. I'm gonna have to learn these signals. But I'm with Christian. I think Kevin can wrap it up now. Does Kevin wrap it up for us?
Yeah, Kevin wraps it up.
Okay, when Christian puts his hands around his throat, that means that it's over.
When he starts pouring gasoline on himself.
Yes, exactly. The world is over. Journalism is dead. All right. We enjoyed having Tim on this podcast. We'll have him back if he'll come back, and we'll have other guests on as well from the Sports Day world-class staff. So from everybody in here and everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.